I mentioned Rex Tillerson, Secretary of State, visiting Russia and trying to perhaps figure out a way around the latest crisis between the Russian government and the United States. Obviously, the Russians were not happy that the government there wasn't happy. Its client state got hammered last week with missiles. Did you see, by the way, just as an aside here, Mother Jones is a magazine. And I'm not. Sometimes I engage in hyperbole, but Mother Jones is a Marxist-Leninist publication. That's no secret. One of the editors there tweeted the other day. She said, "Is it just me, or is Tomahawk missile offensive to Indians?" Well, she did use Indians. That would be considered to be, they say Native American, even though I was born here. So I think she means indigenous people. And several people who responded to her tweet actually happened to be members of various indigenous tribes, and man, they took her to task. It turns out the word tomahawk comes from the English. It was an English weapon. It was introduced to people here in this country. So much for her stupidity. And yet she's the editor, one of the editors at this magazine, which has a national reach. You figure that one out. 944, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. The Trump White House says that Russia should abandon Assad, and that we need a new leader in Syria. Not necessarily ISIS or Al-Qaeda, which those are groups that Assad has been battling. But Charles Krauthammer, speaking last night on Special Report on the Fox News Channel, explains it's silly to think that Russia is going to pack up and walk away.
The reason that the Russians are in there is not an affection for Assad, this is Syria, but because as a result of their involvement, they now have a naval base in warm water Mediterranean. They have an active, very powerful air base in Syria. They have a presence in the Middle East. They are the power. They have displaced the United States, and their entire foreign policy under Putin is to recover the glory and the territory and the influence of the old Soviet Union, one piece at a time. And it does that by taking away from the United States to zero-sum game. So the idea that we're going to persuade them it's not in your interest to stay with Iran and Hezbollah and Assad, who are we to say? Of course it's in the Russian interest. They have succeeded in doing it, and unless we show them a reason to abandon it, they are not going to leave.
They are not going to leave. Pretty well said. And how do you dislodge them? They also have large weapons, just like we have. They have, according to what I read the other day, the most powerful nuclear-tipped missile ever known to man. Right? But pay no attention to that. That's just something that, we're supposed to take, I guess, is... I don't know. You've got people out there who are warmongering right now. A lot of them are conservatives. And I guess, again, it comes back to just... It feels good to sock a bad guy in the nose now and then, but sometimes there's going to be fallout if you do it. And sometimes that emotional response leads you later on to regret what you've done. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLI. Amazing the number of people walking by reading my welcoming sign on the door this morning as they come through our building. Must be they're very impressed with what I'm doing. Just a quick note on Russia. Washington Post reports that indeed one of Donald Trump's campaign workers was surveilled. This broke just in the last couple of days. The fellow's name is Carter Page. As it turns out, you know why he was surveilled? And the FISA court, according to this story in Daily Caller, says judges on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, which review FISA warrant submissions, it's a star chamber, it's a secret court. Well, after all, we're a constitutional republic with liberty, right? Approved virtually all applications. So the FBI went and said, we want to look into this guy because he went and gave a graduation speech at a university in Russia. And 3 years ago, he was approached by Russians. He went to the FBI. He mentioned that he was approached by Russians, and they were asking him. They were trying to turn him into a Russian spy. But he went to the FBI. No good deed goes unpunished because he actually told the FBI that they had tried to recruit him. The FBI decided he needed to be surveilled. Donald Trump is right that the Obama White House and its minions were spying on his campaign and his associates. How far is that going to be buried? You won't see it on the network news. And the network news has ignored the story that Obama's White House lied about the chemical weapons. ABC, NBC, and CBS simply aren't talking about it. I saw that today at Newsbusters. Newsbusters is an affiliate of Media Research Center. Got a little bit more on this story, if I could share this with you. Tucker Carlson, who may end up taking Bill O'Reilly's place. O'Reilly's going on a long vacation. It may be due to some of the allegations that he is facing now about some of his past faux pas around the newsroom. Tucker Carlson, who is a rising star at Fox News, Tucker Carlson's ratings are higher than Megyn Kelly's, which shows you it wasn't Megyn Kelly, it's Fox News. Carlson was on the air last night with Brad Sherman. Brad Sherman is a liberal representative from California who has been harping for months that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to steal the election from his girl, Hillary Clinton. But it seems that Sherman is having some second thoughts.
So you have said for a long time that there are clearly ties between Russia and the Trump campaign and now administration, and you've said it pretty floridly. And yet today, you mocked the Trump administration for not being able to get a meeting with Vladimir Putin. So which is it? Is Trump a puppet of Putin, or are they at odds with each other in a way that's so appalling that you're making fun of it?
Well, last time I was on the show, I said it was clear that Russia hacked Hillary. Whether Trump was in collusion with Russia has yet to be established. That's why we need an independent commission. But clearly, these revelations have put the onus on the Trump administration to bend over backwards and prove that they aren't in league with the Kremlin. And of course, this terrible action by Assad, I mean, he kills people every day by the hundreds. Right. But now to use chemical weapons make it impossible for Trump to ignore that.
Did he say he wanted Trump to bend over? Ew, what a creep. Anyway, he started trying to, he realizes he's painted himself into a corner. Well, Assad, bad dude. The president had no choice. What collusion? No. Well, I never said. Oh, well, I guess I did. Yeah, but pay no attention. Carlson also was speaking with Daily Mail columnist Kate Hopkins. Hopkins wrote a column a couple of weeks ago after the attack by a Muslim man in London that killed several, 5 dead now? One of the women who was knocked off the bridge expired, as they call it in medicine, the other day. That means she died. Innocent woman. Kate Hopkins is a war veteran. She fought in the, I believe, the Afghan War, and she's a columnist for London's Daily Mail. And she wrote a column after that attack the other day, and she said something to the effect of, it's about time that European politicians stop burying their heads in the sand and realized we're dealing with a massive jihad across Europe. And it's the people who made this jihad possible are the politicians in Europe. She's speaking with Carlson last night, and she says, look, this notion that we've got to get rid of Assad, she says, is a really bad idea.
So why are you against removing Assad from power in Syria?
I think we have to remember Assad is a secular leader in an area where everyone is run by their religion. He is there to protect Christians. He is the legal leader of a sovereign state, and he is winning this war. He is ahead in the war, and this war needs to be over. There is no doubt the man is a monster. He has done terrible things. But I would always say you need to choose your monsters. We saw from the disastrous triumph of the Arab Spring what happens when you depose a leader, but there's no one there to take his place. And we also saw just this week what happens to Coptic Christians in Egypt when there's no one there actively defending them. Under Assad, women had the vote, women could drive, and Christians are protected. I think we just need to focus on who the real enemy is, and the real enemy is ISIS.
She pointed out Assad's a bad dude. The Castro brothers, bad dudes, yet Barack Obama broke bread with them. Now, the Saudis are bad dudes, yet we meet regularly with our State Department officials and the like with Saudi royal family members. The Chinese president was here last week, and his government is a violent, vicious, godless government, and yet they're okay because, golly gee, if we broke relations with them, we might have to have a bigger war, and we might not be able to fill Walmart with all of those cheap trinkets. I wanted to add something else to all of this today. So he gassed people. If he did, I'm still leery about believing everything I hear, especially from a lot of corporate-controlled media out there. But he supposedly gassed people. There was gas used. We know that much. But even if he did, the prohibitions about use of gas go back to World War I. Soldiers fighting on the fronts in World War I were gassed, and it was just indiscriminate. And and at that point, people said this is just too inhumane. We should just go back to killing people with bullets and flamethrowers. I'll point out too, troops don't like to be hit with flamethrowers either. It somewhat hurts. Yeah, that burning sensation. Nobody wants to deal with that. And yet, people still drop incendiary bombs in war zones. And those burn up people, and sometimes little children and babies as well. Nobody says, well, we've got to take care of that. We've got to go in and throw a few Tomahawk missiles in. And just a bomb that doesn't blow up people or burn them up, but maybe just sends out clusters and shrapnel and the like, hurts people too, and that's a painful way to die, just like gas is a painful way to die. Being shot up on a battlefield and left there because there's nobody who can come out and rescue you because they'll get shot up, that's a painful way to die too. To sit here and say, yeah, gas is indiscriminate, but that's generally warfare altogether. And Assad is in a war against thugs who would actually ruin Western civilization and subject all of us to that ruination. We've got to keep our heads on in this one. We've got to keep our heads. He's dealing with people who are far worse than he is. And yes, it was emotional to see those pictures, just like the United Airlines pictures raised various emotions. But friends, I don't want to live under the new caliphate. And right now, Assad is a bulwark against that. And he didn't threaten anybody in this country before last week. We've lost track of all of that. Maybe with a passage of a week, maybe some of the emotions that drove last week's actions will subside, and maybe people will look at this and say, you know what? Yeah, I mean, we don't want to live under ISIS or Al-Qaeda. I wanted to also add, yesterday, before I get out of the program today, Sean Spicer, media is just screaming that he's a Holocaust denier today because he made a comment that even Hitler didn't want to use gas. Well, Lefty doesn't know the historical context to which he was speaking. Yes, Hitler used Zyklon B, I believe it was, in order to gas people in crematoria. They would kill them, then they would drag them off to the ovens, the remains. Or sometimes even if they weren't dead, they still got shoved into the ovens. So Sean Spicer could have been a little bit more accurate, but Hitler never used gas on the battlefield because he'd been gassed in World War I. So Hitler, when the Russian hordes were approaching, and he was advised, you know what, just go out and drop some phosphate gas on them, and that'll end it. Hitler wouldn't do it because he said, no, it's happened to me. That's what Mr. Spicer was talking about, and that's what Lefty has no clue about the historical context there because Lefty has been promoting basket weaving in school instead of history. We have about 2 minutes to go. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Good morning, Bill. You kind of stole my thunder there, but it's funny how everybody is going in every direction and trying to make things fit what they're saying. Sean Spicer's under a lot of attack right now for what he said, but yet he said was right. They weren't chemical weapons. They were gassed. I mean, they were put in a building and had stuff pumped in that basically just took their breath away and killed them. I mean, you can do the same thing with R-12 by burning it on a plane, and it turns into the same mustard gas.
And we've got a federal government that sticks these traps out around the woods and near residential neighborhoods in Idaho and spews gas and chemicals all over people and dogs.
Yeah, I mean, it's done everywhere all the time. But what we're talking about with Assad is a bomb that goes out, spreads out, and gets into your body and basically kills you from the inside out. We're not talking about suffocating you. We're talking about melting you down from the inside out. This is the kind of chemical welfare that people don't want anymore. Our own government used mustard gas in the wars and put it on our own people to get them used to it. Just like the cops spray themselves with mace so that they get used to it. The same stuff. But if you sprayed yourself with the stuff that was bombed in Syria, there is no getting used to it. You're dead, and that's it. So there's a big difference, and I wish people would stick to the facts and stop spreading baloney around and trying to make it sound like something it's not.
Thank you for the call. Of course, in war, if you get hit with a bullet through the head, that likely kills you too. To sit here and say that we don't want that kind of war, well, we don't really want any kind, to be honest with you. Sometimes you have to do it. We've got a break. God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this all over again tomorrow morning between 10 and 12 o'clock. Rush Limbaugh will follow us at 10 o'clock, actually just after the Fox News. Sean Hannity at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Glenn Beck at 4, and Dave Ramsey tonight. Dave Ramsey from 7 until 10 o'clock, I believe. Also, just a quick note. Tomorrow, I believe we're joined in studio in the second hour of the program by Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game. Always a fun time to get a chance to sit down with him. And now with, well, at least in our neck of the woods, the snow melted for a couple of days. He may be able to talk about a lot of things going on around our outdoor world.